It looks like Tottenham are finally going to solve their lack of competition for Destiny Udogie with a big bid going in for the Serie A star who's been top of their recruitment list for nearly a year. Meanwhile, I'll give you my preview to tonight's vital home game with Roma in the Europa League, as well as all of the quotes from yesterday's press conferences. And good news for the truest professional we have, as Ben Davies will be staying on at Spurs for another year at least. All this and more on today's episode of the Spurred On podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Please do give this video a like and press subscribe on YouTube if you're not a subscriber for daily Tottenham Hotspur content. And as we get closer to the transfer window, I'll be bringing you all the Premier League transfer news as well. And if you're watching live on Big Up or want to get involved in these episodes live as I record them, go to the top right hand corner there, see bigup.com/the Spurred On podcast. Come over there, join the community. It's only a couple of clicks, and then you can get involved in the chat. As we do this live, I'll answer your questions and we can get involved. Anyway, guys, let's get straight into it. And some transfer news, and that's the Spurs are definitely keen on signing Lecce left back Patrick Dorgu this January. Lecce, however, they want more than the 15 million euros that they requested in the summer. His transfer value has gone up, and they apparently have also demanded that if Tottenham do get their man, that he gets loaned back to them until the end of the season. Now, that is according to Tuttosport in Italy. And of course, the buying now and loaning back is something that we have benefited from before. Did the same with Lucas Bergvall, didn't we? And obviously our South Korean star is coming in later next month with someone we also did the same to. So that is something I could see appealing. It's something that Paratici always liked to do when he was officially our sporting director. I know that he's unofficially still doing some work behind the scenes too. And it's not something that Johan Lange is afraid to do either. However, I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that we do need bodies in the building this January, and we definitely need some support for Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro. Obviously, Jed Spence can support Porro and Udogie in the Premier League, but he's not in that Europa League squad. That could potentially change, as I mentioned in yesterday's video. Could potentially change if we get through to the next round where you can juggle your squad, I believe. But some bodies in the building would be good. But Dorgu is a really good talent. A few clubs sniffing around him. I know Chelsea and Manchester United have been sniffing around. So Spurs want to get ahead of the game, and maybe getting him in January and loaning him back to Lecce wouldn't be a bad move. Offshore Mike says in the comments, keep up the good work, Barnaby. Appreciate that, guys. If you're watching this, please do get any questions in and I'll try and answer them during this episode. Meanwhile, in terms of tonight's game against Roma, Ange Postecoglou gave us in the team news in his press conference yesterday. He said Cutie is getting better. He's a lot closer. We're hoping he'll be out there training with the group with a bit of luck by the back end of this week, if not definitely next week. Now, I have to say my instinct on that is he's not going to be fit for the Fulham game, is he then? So Dragushin and Ben Davies will be able to at least continue their partnership, and hopefully, I mean, they looked really good together, didn't they, on at the weekend against Manchester City? And there's some good balance there. So maybe 3 games in a row for them to build up their partnership, really build that trust in each other, which will, of course, have been massively helped by that clean sheet at the Etihad. Not many clubs get clean sheets at the Etihad, if any. So these 3 games together at least could be good for them. Ange went on to say, Mikey Moore's the other one. We're taking it slowly with him. It's still probably a couple of weeks before he'll be ready to get back into it. I did mention, didn't I, last week or the week before, my fears that maybe Mikey Moore might have got glandular fever or COVID or something, and those fears seem to have been founded and proven correct, because he's had a virus, but he's been out for about 3-4 weeks already, and it's going to be another couple of weeks. So bad news for Mikey Moore, but worse news for us. But at the age of 17, it is important that we take it very slowly with him. Andrew went on to say, Mickey van der Ven is on course, working hard, training. It's day by day with him. We have to make sure he ticks off all the boxes before he gets reintegrated into the squad. And of course, in terms of injuries, we've also got Vicario, Odebear, Richarlison out for tonight and for long term. And Will Lancashire is suspended tonight after that sending off against Galatasaray when we lost 3-2 last month. So I'll go into my predicted team a little bit later in this episode. But in terms of options for Ange Postecoglou, there'll be some youngsters on the bench again. And we're really down to the bare bones a little bit. You know, it can happen at this stage of the season, but unfortunate, really, because we want to be starting to put a bit of a run together, put some momentum together. Obviously, the new Roma manager, their 3rd manager of the season, is the ex-Chelsea and Leicester boss, the Tinker Man himself, Claudio Ranieri. And he said in his press conference yesterday, I want to applaud Ange Postecoglou for the work he's doing at Tottenham. Tomorrow we play against a magnificent team. They will not let us breathe. Good to see that Ranieri knows exactly what Sir Ange of Postecoglou is all about in terms of the high press, in terms of the energy, in terms of the tempo. Ranieri will be very keen to get one over Tottenham Hotspur again, as he did at the old White Hart Lane for Leicester in that kind of, what was it, late December, January game of Leicester's title-winning season, when I think it was Robert Huth, if I remember. I was at that game. Scored the winner from a set piece in a game we very much should have won. Also, Mats Hummels plays at Roma now, and actually under the previous manager, he was just languishing on the bench, but I think Ranieri has brought him in straight away. He said the following: Tottenham have great players such as Son, who always makes you suffer. They're one of my favourite teams. They're a team that will put us under pressure tomorrow and will want to involve the stadium. Well, that's right, actually. A very good point from Mats Hummels that I agree with, which is I think we should involve the stadium. I want this to be a glory night, a big Italian team coming to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We want the Europa League this season. We suffered a bad result at Galatasaray, not an unexpected result, especially with the team that Ange put out, but also, having won the first 3 games and now had a loss, we need to get back on the winning track. And Roma, who've had a difficult start to the season so far, but will have a new manager bounce, we need to find a way to put them to the sword. Not only for our own state of play in the Europa League table, 32 table that it is, but also for the momentum that we need to now start picking up and get some consistency. You can't go to Manchester City and win 4-0 and then get turned over at home in your next game against Roma, and especially not against Fulham at the weekend. So if we can win these 2 games, and it feels like a question we've been asking ourselves, doesn't it, all season, but can we put a run together, 3 in a row now, 3 games in a row, and then we go into, I think, Bournemouth away after that, and then could we make it 4 in a row, and heading into that Christmas period where there are so many games in such a short space of time. But it won't be easy tonight. Like I said, Ranieri's just come in and he will have made them much more compact. They only lost 1-0 in his first game to Napoli, who are flying, obviously, Conte's Napoli, and Ranieri will make them super narrow, super defensive, and Italians, absolutely. The Italian sides, they love defending. They love the tactical element of the game. They love, going down easily if they feel a touch on them. So expect all of that and more tonight. Spurs should have the absolute fair share of the ball. They should be dominating the possession, but they've got to be clinical. When we make chances, when we get in behind, if it happens, because they'll be very deep, we've got to be clinical, just like we were clinical against Manchester City. Ranieri will be trying to instill his philosophy there. It's early days. And listen, Ranieri has had a great career, an unbelievable career, but he's an old man now. And it'll be interesting to see whether those kind of younger players now really look up to him in the same way maybe players did 20 years ago when he joined Chelsea, for instance. However, it's not going to be easy. Like I said, not many options for Ange Postecoglou. And the big question for me is, should Rodrigo Bentancur play in this game? He is not suspended because it's only a UEFA game, not a game under the FA's jurisdiction. I said when he was first banned that I think this ban should count anywhere and everywhere. And I think Tottenham should use it as an opportunity to show how seriously they take racism. However, I think it's fair to say, since we appealed his 7-game ban, trying to get it shorter, that Tottenham probably are not going to really care, unfortunately, about messaging, about optics, about putting a statement on Bentancur by not letting him play in the Europa League games either. So I think Bentancur will play. For me, it's not the right decision, but let me know in the comments, do you agree or not? Do you think Bentancur should play? Do you think his suspension or the length of it was harsh? What do you think about the optics of that? I also think it's a big game for Timo Werner. I'm pretty sure he'll start. He hasn't done brilliantly in games he started this season, really. Obviously, he did get that goal against Manchester City, which was massive for him, and setting up Manchester City in the Carabao Cup game, and then he set up the goal, didn't he, brilliantly for Brennan Johnson in the last minute of the game in the 4-0 win at the weekend. But a few games in the Europa League where he started, he's kind of let the ball kind of bounce off him a little bit and kick the ball out of play when he's trying to pass it a few times. And I just hope that the fans at the stadium get behind Werner today, because we're going to need him. Like I said, we've got lots of injuries, and we need to kind of keep a check on Sonny's minutes and how many minutes he plays. That's why I think Werner will start tonight. And let's get behind him and hope that he does really well. An even bigger game for Fraser Forster, though, tonight. We can't have him in his first game of what will be at least probably 10, 11, 12 games in a row for Spurs. We can't have him throwing one in early or making a mistake with his feet. He's got to do well. And I'm really hopeful that he will. Solanke, obviously, has been such a brilliant player for us. He's really expanded our game, keeping the ball in the final third. His hold-up play is second to none. He will have to play 2 games in 3 days now because of Lankshire's suspension. And it's now absolutely vital. I mean, it always was, but whereas before it was, I think, number 1 on the list of people we couldn't afford to get injured was Vicario. Now he has got injured. Number 1 on the list of who can't get injured now is absolutely Dominic Solanke. We need him to stay fit. We need to, just make sure no injuries for Solanke. My predicted team for tonight's game is as follows. Forster, I think Archie Gray will come in at right back ahead of Porro. Udogie, Davis, Dragishin. Then I think Bentancur will play. And then James Maddison. Lucas Bergvall will come in. And I'm hopeful for a really good performance from Bergvall. I thought he looked good in his little cameo role against Manchester City at the weekend. So I'd like to see him have a great game. Maybe get his first goal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the club. That would be amazing. And then Werner, Johnson and Solanke. Offshore Mike says in the comments, are we potentially calling back players who are on loan? I would say, Mike, probably not. I'd be very surprised if we brought back the likes of Alfie Devine. I know Jamie Donnelly's having a bit of a struggle at Leyton Orient, but unlikely to see him come back unless Orient were happy for him to. I know he's been out of a few matchday squads there, but it seems unlikely to me that someone like Donnelly would come back from a loan period at Leyton Orient where he's not getting games and then come straight into the team in a Europa League game, for instance, or a Premier League game. Now, Ange Postecoglou did give some quotes yesterday about Guillermo Vicario. It was the first opportunity the journalists had to ask him about that. Ange said the following: he's out for months, not weeks. He's tough as nails. The fact he played at that level with a fractured ankle, the shock of it, we'll process it and we'll miss him for a while. Listen, I guess it just shows that Ange was as surprised as we were that Vicario was able to play on for so long and do so with a fractured ankle. I hope, beyond hope, that it wasn't the playing on that did him more damage. There have been a few examples in the last year where we've let players play on and then they've been out for quite a long time. Mickey van der Ven comes to mind, and Spurs have to be really careful with that. When Ange Postecoglou, first came in that first game away at Brentford last season, he took Christian Romero off straight away when he'd had a head injury and he didn't care about the longer term. And I think I'd like to see Ange get back to that kind of level. Now, obviously, I admit, I don't know what the physios are saying, and I'm not saying that it's Postecoglou's fault. I'm sure if the physios say it's okay, and if Vicario says it's okay, then it's very difficult to take a player off. But listen, he was limping through the mixed zone after the game. He had a fractured ankle, and we just have to be so careful with our players. I really think we do. Ange went on to talk about his goalkeeping options. He said, we've got 4 goalkeepers. Fraser, I've known for a long time. He's such a strong character in the group and he's always ready to play. And then he was asked specifically about Forster's ability to play out from the back and how important that is for his goalkeepers to be playing out from the back and to be good with their feet. And Ange said this: I do want to play out from the back, but I don't want them to be Maldini or Platini. I keep telling our players not to pass back to our keepers because they're the ones with gloves on. Hitting long kicks is actually more difficult. There's more skill involved. I'm asking them to do short passes. It's more taking away the risk for them and having the structure to make it a clean process. It's just about changing their mindset. Joe Hart was great at Celtic and Fraser has been great here. They're involved in our passing drills, and Rob Birch, our goalkeeping coach, has been working with him for 18 months, not just this week. So Ange really backing Fraser Forster to the hilt and giving a little bit of insight there into what he really wants his players to do in terms of using the goalkeeper. And I think what it comes across as is that the goalkeeper is an option that they can use if it's a short pass, but then the players have to give that goalkeeper another short pass option. And Ange Postecoglou is right in saying to kick it long as a goalkeeper is a far less kind of percentage-worthy play. It is more difficult chipping the ball and trying to get the exact weight on it. So it does kind of make sense. But for me, the key is we have to give Forster options all the time because he's definitely not as comfortable with the ball at his feet. And unless he has easy options, the chances are he will try and play difficult passes or passes to players who are being pressed high. And that is where previously in the game at Coventry and some of the other times I've seen Forster come in, that is where he has got us into a little bit of trouble. Ange Postecoglou was then asked, will Spurs sign another goalkeeper on a free agent? He said, it's not going to happen. That's why we've got a squad. I don't think signing a free agent helps. Me naming Fraser Forster in the Europa League squad looks like a radical decision now, doesn't it? He's being sarcastic there, doesn't it? Wasn't he? Because a lot of us fans, a lot of people in the podcasts and journalists were questioning the squad that Ange put together for the Europa League and suggesting that maybe he could have taken Fraser Forster out of that squad to allow Jed Spence in. And Ange Postecoglou is basically saying, thank goodness I made that decision now that Vicario is injured, because, Brandon Austin and some of the other goalkeepers, the younger goalkeepers we've got, not quite ready yet. Alfie Whiteman, for instance, and of course Luca Gunter. And actually, I'll bring you a quote about them in a second. Ange Postecoglou was asked about whether he'd sign a goalkeeper in January. He said, I think any club that gets a significant injury in their goalkeeper group assesses where they're at. It's not just another injury. But at the same time, like I said, it is just one injury. We've been dealing with setbacks for a while. There's a lot of work. We talk about depleted squads. We had 2 schoolboys on the bench at the weekend. In terms of January, we're always working towards the next window of what the best scenario is for us. And a lot of that will depend on where we're at from a squad perspective. So actually, there were quite a lot of headlines coming out yesterday from people saying that Ange and the club definitely won't sign another goalkeeper, be that on a free transfer or in January. But that's not actually the case. He's not ruling it out in January at all, in terms of if an opportunity came for a younger goalkeeper who could be a reserve for the future. For instance, someone like James Trafford from Burnley, who I talked about, I think, in yesterday's video. But he's saying it would have to be right, and it would have to be the right move for the medium term to long term of the club. So that's where Ange is at with that. He was also, as I mentioned, asked about the other goalkeepers at the club, apart from Fraser Forster. Sorry, it's 9:30 when I'm recording this, very early. He said there's young Luca Gunter, but to be fair, he's been injured, so he's not really ready. Brandon Austin's improving all the time, and Alfie Whiteman has been at the club for a while. Now, I have to say, doesn't really say a great deal about Alfie Whiteman, does it? Just saying he's been at the club for a while. So I'm not sure he's very high up on the pecking order. But Luca Gunter, as a young kid, is highly rated. And from the very little I've seen of him, looks like a good distributor of the ball as well, which is obviously key in Ange's way of playing. According to the Times, Tottenham are likely to look at homegrown goalkeepers in their bid to add reinforcements in that department. And they are targeting goalkeepers who are comfortable with the ball at their feet and comfortable playing out under pressure. Well, that all makes sense, doesn't it? Excuse me. Destiny Udogie was in the press conference yesterday. He was asked a little bit about Guillermo Vicario's injury. He said, we're going to miss him because in the group, he's a great leader. I spoke to him the day after the operation. I asked him how it was going. He told me he'd had the operation. So not exactly like Vicario saying to Destiny that the operation went brilliantly, but still good to see that they're in touch. And like I said yesterday, the Spurs group all acting like a family, caring about each other. He said, Udogie went on to say, I think as a team, we know our quality. We believe in ourselves. Every game we want to win. We know we can do it. We won Saturday, and now the focus is on Thursday and then Sunday against Fulham. We have to take it game by game. He was asked about how he tries to improve his own game. He says, when I have a bad game, I always try to watch it back. I see my mistakes and I try to improve from them. I try to learn from setbacks. And he was also asked whether any previous Spurs players provided him with any inspiration. He said, in terms of left-footed defenders before me, there have been plenty, and I can think of Danny Rose as an example. Brennan Johnson has also done an interview this week. I thought those Destiny Udogie quotes, by the way, were pretty standard kind of media-trained answers, but good to see that he knows about Danny Rose, who, of course, was such a brilliant fullback for us during the peak Pochettino era. Brennan Johnson was asked about Ange Postecoglou's philosophy. He said, I think we've shown that his philosophy can work by beating these great teams like Manchester United and Manchester City this season. I think all the guys here know that we have to be confident in the way that we play because we've shown what we can do with it. We know we can't really come away from that because when we do, it's when we're at our worst. Brennan was asked about his relationship with Postecoglou. He said, since I've been here, it's been a really positive relationship. There's times where if I'm doing well, he will always keep pushing me to do more and to not think about the past. He always wants to think about the next section. And when things aren't going well, I think he's really good at identifying why it hasn't gone well and he gives really good advice to try and change that. He really can see it with a clear vision, and he's good at telling you. I love to hear that about Ange Postecoglou. And I think especially from someone like Brennan Johnson, who has obviously been under a lot of pressure in his young Spurs career so far, huge transfer fee for such a young player, and someone who the fans have kind of had too big expectations for, really. I think because of that transfer fee for 50 million, I think a lot of the fans expected him to be the finished article. The reality is, when you're buying an English player from a British player from an English club, the tax on that is so much higher. So that's why Johnson cost so much, and he was still a work in progress. And I love to hear him talk about how Ange is helping him get to his full potential. He was asked how Postecoglou helped restore his confidence after that difficult time at the beginning of this season. He said a lot of it can go under the radar, especially from outside our little Tottenham bubble. He's good at making sure working hard for the team is rewarded. Little bits where someone runs a lot and helps out the team so much. He definitely praises them for it. So little bits like that are good when maybe the goals aren't going in, because it makes you feel like you're still rewarding the team with your hard work. He was also asked about his late winner against Coventry, which got us through that first round of the Carabao Cup. He said, I think when I got my first goal, the team was in a tough spot. The way we won the game so late, it brought all of us together. And for me personally, it gave me a bit of confidence and belief. And since then, it's been a good few months. So yeah, I think that game and me scoring that goal was important for me and the team to start turning it around. That's true, isn't it? Because we went on a really good run of about 9 wins in 10 games after that, a run that we really need to kind of happen again now. We need to make it happen again. Get some consistency and some momentum going forward. Brennan went on to say, I think there's a lot of things in this system that really suit me as a player and allow me to score and get involved with the team. It definitely suits me really well. And it's a team that I'm really happy to be playing for. Finally, Brennan was asked on the team working to improve. He says, I think honesty is the key, whether we've played well or played badly. If we haven't done too well, we have to own it instead of blaming anyone else. I think a good measured interview by Brennan Johnson there. He says all the right things. And I really think, as does, by the way, every Welsh fan who absolutely love him, he can be an absolutely elite player for Spurs as he grows up within the hierarchy of the club, as he really starts to believe in himself as one of the mainstays, the absolute key players in this team. He will become a real superstar in a few years' time. I really believe that. Finally, as I mentioned in the opening, Tottenham are going to trigger Ben Davies's 1-year option in his contract, keeping him with the club for next season. Don't forget, with Davies, not only a brilliant professional who is happy enough, whether he's not in the squad or if he's coming in to play in the first team, but also he is a UEFA A licensed coach holder. He's a holder of that badge. And so I'm sure we will try and keep him at the club to coach some of the younger teams as he gets older as well. And you can't beat having players in and around your squad like Ben Davies. A true professional, been at the club over 10 years. Back in the day, he would have got a testimonial and I would have gone to it. What a brilliant, brilliant servant to the club Ben Davies has been. Okay, guys, thanks so much for watching and listening to this. Please do sign up to the Spurred On community on Big Up so you can watch all of these transfer daily shows, daily transfer and Tottenham shows live and get involved as Offshore Mike did today. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do give this video a like. Press subscribe if you're not a YouTube Spurred On subscriber as yet for daily Spurs content and transfer content from across the Premier League as it gets closer to that window. Let's hope we can beat Roma tonight. Come on, you Spurs.